All right, let's dive into Proverbs chapter 15. And we're not just going to read it. Oh no, we're going to lock this entire chapter into your memory verse by verse. I mean, we're going to build these mental images so powerful you won't be able to forget them. You ready? Let's get started. So, the big idea behind this whole chapter is actually pretty simple. Think of it like this: every single thing you do, every word you say, every choice you make, it's a step. And you're always walking on one of two paths. One goes up towards life. The other, well, it goes down. So as we walk through this together, I want you to keep this one question in your mind. What world are you building right now with your words? Okay, first up, a tale of two tongues. This is all about the power of your words. Let's see what that looks like. All right, verse 1. Here's the picture I want you to see. Imagine an argument that's getting really heated, It's like a bonfire getting out of control. Now, a soft answer, that's like taking a bucket of cool water and just dousing the flames. Pshh, it calms everything down. But a harsh word? Man, that's like grabbing a can of gasoline and just throwing it right on the fire. Boom, you get an explosion of anger. See the difference? So where do these words even come from? Well, verse 2 gives us a clue. The tongue of the wise. Picture a master painter, right? They've got this tiny brush and they're carefully, thoughtfully applying just the right amount of paint, using their knowledge to create something beautiful. But the mouth of a fool, that's a whole different story. Imagine a fire hydrant that's just busted open on the street, spewing out absolute junk and nonsense everywhere. It's just a mess. Now, verse 3 kind of zooms the camera all the way out. It says, "The eyes of the Lord are everywhere, watching over both the evil and the good." And don't think of this like some scary security camera waiting to catch you. It's more like a constant, steady presence that just sees everything. Nothing gets by. Not the good stuff, not the bad stuff. It's all seen. And verse 4 really drives home just how high the stakes are with our words. A wholesome tongue, it says, is a tree of life. Picture your words planting a beautiful, strong tree that gives fruit and shade to people. It builds them up. But perverseness in the tongue, that's like taking a sledgehammer and just shattering someone's spirit like it's a delicate glass heart. One builds life, the other just destroys. Okay, so how do people actually respond to all this wisdom? Verse 5 shows us one way. Picture this. A guy is drowning and his father throws him a life preserver labeled instruction. But the fool, he just gets angry and slaps it away. He despises it. Now, verse 6 shows us the result of these different attitudes. The house of the righteous, it's filled with treasure, peace, love, stability. But the wicked, all their income just brings trouble. Then you get to verse 7 and you see the opposite of the fool. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge. Imagine them walking around, scattering these little seeds of light that just instantly bloom and push back the darkness. Two totally different responses, right? So that leads us right into our next big idea, the heart's true treasure. We're moving from the words we say on the outside to what's really going on in our inner world. We actually touched on this, but let's look closer at verse 6. On the one hand, the house of the righteous has much treasure. And we're not just talking about money. Picture a warm, glowing home filled with peace, laughter, and love. That's the real treasure. Then you have the wicked. Their revenue, their income, it just brings trouble. Imagine a giant bank vault, but when you open it, it's just filled with spiders and snakes and anxiety. That's the kind of trouble it's talking about. All right, now let's talk about verse 8. This one's about our offerings to God. It says the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. So picture someone giving this huge, beautifully wrapped, expensive gift, but inside, the box is completely empty. It's all for show. God sees right through that. But the prayer of the upright, it's his delight. That's like someone just leaning in and whispering a simple, honest, heartfelt prayer right into God's ear. He absolutely loves that. So this next stretch of verses, wow, it really lays out the tragic path of the fool. Let's walk through it. Verse 9 says, "The way of the wicked is an abomination." Picture a path that just leads straight into a disgusting swamp. Then verse 10 says that anyone who hates correction will die. Imagine someone walking towards a cliff and you hand them a map showing the danger and they just rip it up in your face. Tragic. Verse 11 goes even deeper. It says, "Even hell is laid bare before the Lord, so how much more are our own hearts?" Think of it like God having X-ray vision that sees right through everything. Nothing is hidden. And that leads to verse 12. A scoffer doesn't love the one who corrects him. This is the person who, when you try to warn them, literally just plugs their ears and walks away. So where does our joy or our sorrow really come from? It's all from the inside out. Look at verse 13. A merry heart makes a cheerful face. It's like having a little sun glowing inside your chest, and that light just can't help but shine out through your face. But when the heart is sorrowful, the spirit gets crushed. It's like that inner sun goes out, and all you're left with is a cold, cracked stone. And then verse 15 builds on that. It says that for a person with that merry heart, life is a continual feast. Even when things are tough on the outside, they're feasting on the inside. And what do we feed that heart? Well, verse 14 gives us this incredible, stark contrast. The heart of someone with understanding actively seeks knowledge. Imagine them in a giant library, just eagerly pulling books off the shelf, hungry for wisdom. But the mouth of fools? It says it feeds on foolishness. And the mental picture for that is, well, it's grim. It's like someone literally eating trash out of a dumpster. That's what they're choosing to fill themselves with. The choice couldn't be clearer, right?
And that choice, what we feed on, leads us directly to this next section, a feast or a fight. It's all about choosing peace over conflict.
These next two verses really paint a picture of what truly matters. First, verse 16 says, it's better to have just a little, but have the fear of the Lord, than to have great treasure that's full of trouble. Then verse 17 gives us the perfect image for that. It says a simple dinner of vegetables where there's love is better than a huge, fancy steak dinner where there's hatred. You can just feel the difference, can't you? The warmth of that simple meal with family versus the cold, dead silence at that rich, fancy table.
And we're back to that fire metaphor in verse 18. A wrathful person, they see a little spark of disagreement, and what do? They run over and start throwing logs and gasoline on it, trying to turn it into a forest fire. They stir up strife. But someone who is slow to anger, they see that same spark, and they calmly walk over with a bucket of water and just put it out. They bring peace. One's a fire starter, the other's a peacemaker. So what do these two paths actually feel like to walk on? Verse 19 gives us a great visual. The way of the lazy person is like trying to push your way through a thick wall of thorns. It's painful, it's slow, you get nowhere. But the path of the upright? It's a wide-open, paved highway, smooth sailing. Verse 20 then connects us to family. A wise son makes his father glad, but a foolish man despises his mother. And verse 21 explains why someone would choose the thorny path. It says folly is actually joy to someone who lacks sense, but a person with understanding just walks straight ahead on that highway. So how do we stay on the highway? Verse 22 gives us the secret. Get advice. Without counsel, your plans fall apart. But with lots of good advisors, your plans succeed. It's like having a clear blueprint and a whole team to help. And speaking of good counsel, verse 23 gives us one of the most powerful images yet. A word spoken in due season. How good it is. To really get this, picture a marathon runner who has just crossed the finish line. They're exhausted, gasping, about to collapse, and at that exact moment, someone hands them a cup of ice-cold water. That feeling, that perfect, life-giving relief, that is what the right word at the right time feels like. Okay, all of these choices, these words, these paths, they've all been leading somewhere, and this final section is about the ultimate destination. It's called the upward path. And this brings us to the absolute peak of the chapter, verse 24. This is it. This is the destination. The way of life winds upward for the wise. It's a path that climbs up a sun-drenched mountain, getting brighter with every step. And what's the purpose of this upward path? So you can turn away from the grave below, from that dark, shadowy valley. This is the whole chapter in one image. This is the choice. And God's justice just makes this divide even clearer. Verse 25 says, the Lord will tear down the house of the proud. Picture a lightning bolt just blasting a fancy mansion to pieces. Then verse 26 says, wicked thoughts are an abomination. Verse 27 warns that greed just brings trouble to your own family. And verse 28 says the righteous person actually thinks before they speak. They study how to answer. And all of this leads to verse 29. The Lord is far from the wicked. It's like they're shouting into a dead phone line, but he hears the prayer of the righteous. For them, it's a direct, open line. Even a whisper gets through instantly. So the big question is, how do we get on that upward path? And more importantly, stay on it. The chapter wraps up by giving us the absolute foundation. It's all about this. Before honor comes humility. It really all comes down to our posture, doesn't it? Are we teachable? Verse 31 says the person who can actually listen to a life-giving rebuke will end up living among the wise. And verse 32 drives it home. If you ignore instruction, you're only hurting yourself. But if you can actually listen to correction, you gain understanding. It's really that simple. It's like you're lost in the woods and someone offers you a map and a compass. The wise person says, "Thank you," and finds their way out. And that brings us to the final, powerful verse that ties it all together. Verse 33. What's the very first class you take in the school of wisdom? The fear of the Lord. And what comes before honor? Humility. Here's the final picture for you. Imagine someone setting out to build a magnificent tower called honor. But what's the very first thing they have to do? They have to get on their knees and lay the deep, solid foundation stone called humility. Because without that foundation, the whole thing is just going to come crashing down.
And there you have it, Proverbs 15. It's a journey, isn't it? A clear path that leads upward, built one choice, one word at a time, all starting with that foundation of humility. The path is laid out right in front of you, so the only question left is the one you see right here. Wisdom starts with just one step. What's yours going to be today?